Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my show. I'm Mary Grace, and this is Real Talk with Mary Grace. It's Monday, the 21st of February, President's Day. Happy President's Day to our favorite president, Donald J. Trump. And we are live. It's another episode. We have so much to talk about today, and I hope that everybody can make it to the live show. But if you don't, please leave a comment in the replay so that we can say hello. I hope everybody, let's see, looks like everybody's coming in. There we go. Got some graphics up. Hello to everybody. Don't forget to tag people when you're on all these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, um, YouTube, and CloudHub. CloudHub is channel 111. And I got my username for Truth Social, and that is going to be at Mary Grace. At Mary Grace. That's it. And so, just a clue about usernames. When you go over to any platform to look for somebody, uh, it's the username that you want to look for, the at Mary Grace. Because if you go and search the name Mary Grace on any platform, you're going to see tons of people with that name. I wanted to go ahead with just Mary Grace and not Mary Grace Media or Real Mary Grace or anything like that, because I've never been able to get that on any of these platforms that have been around for a while. And I was super excited to get it. I persisted last night until I got my email confirmation, and then I got my username. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, Truth Social uh, launched the app on iPhone for iPhones last night, and that is President Trump's new media platform, Truth Social. And I think that it's coming soon to Android. Uh, Probably has something to do with the Android world, not necessarily with the app. But what they're seeing with this launch is that there's a lot of delays and things like that. And you can see people complaining about it. Um, but let me tell you a little bit about the process. Once um, uh, once you download the app and you try to set up your account, people have been running into delays. They've been running into snags. Even when you put in your email address and you wait for the verification, sometimes it can take quite a while. And and then once you get your email verification and you set up your username, then you get an email that, or you get a message that says, "Congratulations, you're number what, like 500,000 on the waiting list." Uh, so you don't need an invitation to get the app. You just go to the App Store on your iPhone. Um, there's not they don't have an Android app ready yet, but it says it's coming. Um, so just here's what I want to say to you guys. Um, I'm over on Truth Hammer's account on Telegram, and this is what he says about this launch. So I want people to really be careful about getting negative and discouraged about this launch. Don't let the negative Nellies and the glass half full people drag you down and tell you, oh, it's not working. Oh, it's, just like everything else, whatever. Um, Praying Medic posted that he said, Praying Medic posted and said that he did get confirmation that they're having some technical issues, and that they're working on it. Okay, that was this morning that he posted that. So this is what Truth Hammer says. As a software engineer, I'm not really concerned yet. Very few new systems ever launch under this kind of load. The only way to develop a reliable infrastructure is post-launch, as you witness things breaking and see how to fix them. Two, we've witnessed how many apps being cyber attacked over the last couple of years, with Give Send Go being the most recent. He said, no intel, but I'd be shocked. Um, if Truth Social isn't being DDoS right now, so getting a DDoS attack. Okay. Um, and then Praying Medic says, I can confirm they are experiencing technical problems, but are undergoing maintenance right now. Um, so guys, just just hang tight and understand that even when Twitter launched back in the day, it wasn't perfect right off the bat. And just keep in mind what he's saying about, troubleshooting as it goes live. That's really critical to understand. There's only so much you can do. Um, there's only so many redundancies and contingencies you can account for when you do something like this. You have to stress test it under load. And the only way to do that, short of getting a million people beta testing it, is to actually launch it. All right. Um, so just be aware of that and, pray, continue to pray against any attacks, any malicious attacks on the site. Um, so just wanted to tell you that. All right. And so just remember, um, yeah, Millie points out that Twitter didn't have 300 million people waiting for it to launch, right? They didn't have people just clamoring to get on this app. Uh, so, you may have your opinions about the way that they rolled it out or the way that they promoted it or things like that. Everybody has their opinion, but try to stay in a positive space, okay? Like right here. Don't fritz out over this. It's not worth it. Um, just, focus your energy on being positive, okay? And just ignore the people that are trying to tell you that, oh, it's not working or whatever. Those are the same people that will tell you that Trump has lost his base and all of that. All right. So just keep that in mind. There's always going to be people out there. I mean, somebody shared something yesterday in my Telegram, and it was a whole thread on Twitter about how somebody had put together all of this evidence proving that President Trump was the Antichrist. And it looks really compelling if you read through it. But here's the thing, you know, her gut was telling her that something was kind of off, right? And so she posted it in the Telegram and said, "What do you guys think?" And so I weighed in and said, I think that's a concern troll. It's a psyop. It's designed to get your focus off, to make you doubt yourself. Um, Never ever forget that everything that we've witnessed over the past 5 going on 6 years, or seven, really, if you 2015 was when Trump, said that he was running. Um, e- Everything that we've witnessed is military grade psychological operations meant to mess with your mind and gaslight you at the highest levels possible. Don't ever forget that, guys. Um, and one of the things that they're trying to accomplish on Truth Social is to prevent those types of bad actors from getting onto the platform. Right now, it's only open to USA users, and I think that part of the reason is so that they can keep the bot farms from inundating and flooding the site. If you don't know what bot farms or troll farms are, if you've ever seen these pictures of um, these troll farms, they're in Asia primarily, and so you have like one individual who is in charge of maybe 100 phones, and they're all set up, like in a console, and that person is responsible for tweeting or Facebooking all day long, and they're given scripts to use that are part of a psychological operation. That's what they did at the beginning of COVID to try to drive the fear and the narrative. The things that were trending on social media for example, with people falling over, dying in the streets, that was all intentional. Those things were trending to get people scared. And so just understand that, and understand that what is happening with Truth Social is a very strong attempt to counteract that, and to prevent the platform from getting inundated, uh, right from the start. Okay. Um, okay. Hold on just a second, guys. I just need to take care of something really quickly. Okay. All right. So, so that's part of what's happening here. Apologize for the interruption. That's part of what's happening here is that uh, they want to really maintain the integrity of the platform. All right. I'm not going to say like it's for your protection because we're done with that language. I don't ever want anybody ever to say it's for your protection again. I just don't. Um, and speaking of which, I don't know if you saw the title of today's show, but it looks like Justine has taken gold for being the world's top dictator. I mean, he just like ran right past Kim Jong Un and President Xi and his daddy Castro. You name it. Like, I think he's in the running to be like on par with Pol Pot. Okay, I mean, it's pretty horrific, you know. Um, Who's that guy out in Zimbabwe? What's that guy's name? Mugabe, right? I mean, we're talking. I I can't even begin to describe what we're seeing here in our neighbors to the north. I mean, we've been worried about Mexico because all of the illegals are coming through the border there. I mean, at this point, we're looking at. I wouldn't be surprised if we have Canadians seeking political asylum in the United States. Did you ever in your lifetime think that you would hear somebody say that? Hey, Canada, come on over here. I mean, I would welcome the Canadians, all those truckers, the people that were at the protest. Wow, wow, yeah, and yeah. Make no mistake. Um, Creepy Joe wants to be that. That's what he wants to be. And how do you know that? You know it because not a single world leader has come out that I know of in condemnation, or even commented on what Justine has done over the weekend. I'm just going to start calling him Baby Fidel. All right. So he is, I mean, okay, here's some quotes from his press conference today. So, as you know, he invoked the Emergency Act in Canada last Thursday, and he moved all of his goons um, into Ottawa. I mean, we're talking like unmarked officers with like high level military equipment and uniforms. I'm sure a lot of you saw the mounted police trampling the people in the crowd. My understanding of mounted police crowd control is that it's meant to hold back, to resist an advancing crowd, um, not to plow into a docile crowd. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen that happen. I've never seen a mounted unit just barreling through, um, just barreling through a crowd like that. Okay. Um, so let me just read you some um, excerpts from his press conference today. Oh, what I wanted to say is the the is it the House of Commons that was supposed to meet on Friday, or the I'm not clear on my Canadian politics. Forgive me if you're Canadian. Um, Parliament, House of Commons, we call it Congress when both houses are meeting, and then we call it the House of Representatives and the Senate. So one of those was supposed to meet on Friday, and or was it Saturday? And it was actually, this is the irony. Okay, they were supposed to meet to debate his launching the Emergency Act, but because of the emergency, they didn't meet. How's that for irony? And my understanding is that they're supposed to meet this evening. Is that right? So here's what he says, and I think this is, obviously he got away with, unleashing his dogs onto the crowds over the weekend, and I mean it's just the saddest thing to see these Canadians um, who are just the most peaceful, kind people I've ever seen. I mean, you're listening to them in the videos. I mean, they're just in shock. They're literally in shock because they don't even have a grid for this kind of evil. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years of watching the the political landscape is that when you look at the interaction between the left, and I'm talking about, uh, the far left ideology. I'm not talking about classical liberals who think they're on the left but are actually more centrist. I'm talking about like the vile, um, just hateful leftist. Okay, uh, you see them on social media, and you hear them talking, and they come up with all kinds of uh, ideas that they accuse the the right of implementing, right? They come up with things like, you know, um, all kinds of like this. They attribute a lot of evil to conservatives, and conservatives are generally perplexed by that because, like, it's things that we wouldn't have even thought of doing. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's how the left has gotten away with so much, is because they scheme and plan and plot at levels of evil that we don't even necessarily anticipate because our minds just don't go there. And I've talked about this before because, you know, a lot of these people like they're it's becoming increasingly clear that there's really no gray area here, right? There's no like dictator light, all right? There's no leftist light. There's just it's like you're either partnered with the devil, your father the devil, or you are walking with God. Like there's no in between. All right? And so, as Christians, as believers, as people of faith, we have we're grounded in the goodness of God. And so if our thoughts, if we're taking every thought captive, if our minds have been transformed by the renewing that comes with a relationship with Christ, we don't actually even have the thoughts that would lead us to do the kinds of things that they do. Make sense? And so, you know, we're seeing that in Canada on a really grand scale, because the Canadians have largely embraced a culture of peace, a culture of goodness. I think that they have a pretty strong foundation in faith. Now, where they are with it right now, I don't know. I think that revival is coming to there in a lot of places, but the overarching um, uh, moral compass of Canadians is one of just goodness, and they really expect that out of their leaders, out of the police. And so one of the common threads that you hear over and over again in these videos is these protesters are standing there and they're appealing to the police. And also, like, the convoy spokesperson, they're constantly appealing to um the leadership and saying, this is like, you're one of us. We're Canadian. And they say that as if that's all the explanation that's needed. Like, we're all Canadians, because in their minds, Canadian means not evil, not a dictator, not a fascist. Do you see what I'm saying? They don't have a grid for what they're seeing out of Justine. You guys see that? And so it really is just it's heartbreaking um to witness this, because the very people that they have thought all this time that they could trust have just utterly, they've gone from maybe you can trust us to just utter and outright destruction and breakdown of the social contract that has existed in that nation for years. Um, that to me is one of the most uh, sad and heartbreaking things to witness in all of this. And I'm trying to think of an analogy of, what would you compare it to? It's almost like um, when you see a hold on a second. Okay, it's almost like imagine imagine a child who grows up in a loving and secure home, with an intact family, um, you know, dinner around the table every night, uh, um, just i- really steeped in a culture of peace and safety. And imagine, having a situation where the children have a grievance against the parents, and they want to have a conversation, and you know the parents go from like 0 to 100 in punishing the kids, like even to the point of like kicking them in the head, and taking away all their possessions, and and imprisoning them, locking them in their room, basically. Like, imagine growing up like that and then having your parents turn on you like that. That's the level of cognitive dissonance that a lot of Canadians are experiencing right now. There's no grid in their entire culture for this kind of reaction from the government. I mean, it like there really are shell shocked right now. A lot of them are just like, what what just happened? And you saw it the other day in the press conference that was done with the leadership. The gentleman, I think his name is Tom. That he wasn't a trucker. He was the spokesperson basically for the convoy. I mean, he broke down in tears because all they've been asking for this whole time is just talk to us. We just want to talk. We just want to be heard. And so that to me is one of the most heartbreaking things, because Justin is baby Fidel is now he's doubling down. So, imagine your child, imagine it going to talk to a parent, a child going to talk to a parent and just saying, "Hey, we don't really like um what's happening right now. Uh we really want to talk to you about it." And having the parents turn on you and say, "You're a racist, misogynist, extremist, a violent terrorist." Like, that's okay. Where did that come from? That's what's happening right now. That's what's going on in Canada. And, I mean, Justine didn't waste any time going from, you know, um, when was it? Last year, advocating, publicly advocating for the rights of Indian farmers to protest their government, kneeling with Black Lives Matter, to just outright war on the proletariat. And this is the thing that is so disturbing, is that the very people that purport to be the champions of the working class um, have shown that they have utter and complete disdain for the working class, the people that they're supposedly championing. I guess it's only good to be working class if you work exactly the way the elites want you to. In other words, submit. That's what we're seeing right now. And so uh, here's some things that Justine is saying. Um, and that is this. Okay, he's saying, I can't imagine anyone who votes no on the Emergencies Act is doing anything other than indicating that they don't trust the government to make incredibly momentous and important decisions at a very difficult time. So now he's painting uh, the representatives, the MPs, into a corner, right? He's gaslighting and setting up the narrative to say that any MP that votes no on the Emergencies Act is anti-government. Do you see that? You see the setup there? And then he says, it says Trudeau is asked to name a specific power he thinks the government needs that justifies Emergencies Act remaining in place. First one he offers is power to conscript tow truck drivers, noting the government had to force several tow truck operators to help government remove trucks. This is a big one, guys. So you remember when I told you that the heavy wreckers, the tow trucks, would not tow the tractor trailers? Well, I was right. Justine used the Emergencies Act as a way to force the tow truck drivers, with no recourse, to go and tow these trucks. Um, that's what is happening right now. Um, and I mean, it's shocking that he's doing that. And then he says, Trudeau implies the Emergencies Act vote tonight will be a confidence motion on his government, but adds he's confident it'll pass. Um, so this to me is the most disturbing, because my understanding of the way that uh, it's my understanding is that in Parliament, the way that the government works there is that if that they can actually call for an election at any time. So they can do a vote of no confidence against this prime minister and hold another election and get him out of there. What he's doing right now is he's actually basically threatening everybody that is going to participate in the vote. I mean, he's this is like mob behavior at a level that's unprecedented, right? He's saying basically, like, I'm confident that everybody will vote to keep me in power, right? It's like, I'm confident that they'll vote to keep me in power, right? That's his stance, okay? That's what bullies and thugs do. Um, yeah, so it's a big problem. Now, I want you guys to listen to a podcast. Not right now. Wait until I'm done. But I want you to go and listen to the podcast that Joe Rogan put up over the weekend, or on Spotify. And if you're not on Spotify, it is on Rumble. And I shared it. I think I shared it to my Telegram. If I didn't, I'll do it right now. People have been downloading important stuff to Rumble and BitChute. and what's the other one? Uh, Odyssey. Those platforms, they've been doing that, to archive everything because we know that things get taken down so easily. All right, so if somebody can find it, did I put it in my Telegram? Let me see. I know I tweeted it. Let me see. Oh, the other thing that Baby Fidel said was, we didn't want to use the Emergencies Act. It reminds me of when Hussein was president and he would always blame everything on the people, right? When he would create a crisis and then respond to it and scold people for having to respond to it. Like I didn't want to have to beat you, but it's kind of your own fault. That's what he's saying. It's just so abusive. Um, Crazy. All right. Here we go. Here's the episode. So here's what I wanted you guys to see. Let me just share this into my Telegram right now. Oh, it's not letting me do that. Okay. Copy. Mary Grace Media, official. All right. There it is. Now, um, so check it out on my Telegram. My Telegram is Mary Grace Media official. Let me show you that link. There's my Telegram. So it's t.me/Mary Grace Media official. That's how you can find me. All right. Now you need to go watch this podcast. Why? Okay, it's an interview, a 3-hour long interview that Joe Rogan did with Majid Nawaz. Majid. He calls him Majid. Okay. Um it's fascinating. It will shed so much light onto what we're seeing right now, and he does an incredible job of articulating so much of what we're witnessing in the Western world right now, with regard to the unfettered use, implementation and use of emergency powers. And he draws on his own personal history, having been jailed in an Egyptian jail as a extremist at the time, and he talks about the way that his rights were disregarded because of emergency measures that had been put into place in Egypt 20 years prior at the assassination of Anwar Sadat. And I want everybody to listen to this. First of all, it also gives you a very different and I think much needed perspective on Islam. Um, and but that's not the key focus here. The focus is that he does an incredible job of tying together his own personal experiences and his years and years of activism, and his transition from being an extremist to actually becoming a champion for democracy. And because he was basically a you know an apologist for Islamic totalitarianism and anti-democracy, and then he had a major shift when he was in prison because Amnesty International actually advocated for him. I would like to see them advocating now for our J6 prisoners and for uh, Canadians who are being victimized by their government, but they don't really bring that up. Um, but it's a really very compelling conversation. Take the time to listen to it. Listen to it a couple of times. I'm actually listening to it again because I think that he really hits the nail on the head, and he talks about something called mission creep, and how, for example, something that starts out as possibly having some um, some foundation. Hold on. Okay. He talks about having, apologies, guys, I'm multitasking here. Um, so he talks about having, when emergency powers are enacted, sometimes there's a basis in necessity for some of it. Um, but in general, it's done, uh, even if it started with a grain of truth, it's perpetuated on a lie. And so, for example, he talks about the major aha moment that he had during the pandemic when it became clear that that this so-called health emergency was being used to strip people of their rights, really without any um, legislative involvement. That they just summarily made edicts and restrictions, and they're not laws, they're mandates. Hold on, guys. That they made these restrictions because of a so-called emergency. All right, and this is and what we're seeing now is that they are actually creating the emergencies. And he uses going into Iraq as a prime example, because that's where supposedly there were weapons of mass destruction, and the whole thing was predicated upon a lie. And so he goes into detail about the parallels that he sees between what happened to him when he was in Egypt, and the fact that the government had carte blanche to do what they did to him, because of those emergency powers that had been implemented and never really withdrawn. Similar to what we're dealing with the emergency powers that were put into place under the Patriot Act. The fact that we have to be that we go through the indignities that we go through just to try to get on a plane. And the Department of Homeland Security, the things that were implemented, that were put into place from the Patriot Act, that really have paved the way for extrajudicial measures, that really are a very strong breach of the social contract that we have with our governments. That's really what we're seeing here. And I've talked about this. I've talked about uh, the social contract on my show. And I talked about it early on in 2020, which is that, oh, hey, Donald, it, it, which is that, hold on just a second, guys. Um, so I apologize. I'm trying to I've got a work thing going on, and it's I keep getting text. Not good timing. Okay. So I'm trying to keep my train of thought going here because it's a pretty serious topic. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Okay, where was I? I was talking about the fact that these punitive measures have been put in place. I was talking about the social contract. Uh, in the beginning of 2020, and like about probably 6 weeks into the pandemic, I don't know if you guys remember, I went on a rant about baby Mengele, and I was talking about he, how he has broken the social contract when they just kept extending and extending and extending these, you know, lockdowns. Right? It was what, 2 weeks to slow the spread, and then it became stop the spread, and then it became 6 weeks, and then I mean, you guys were there, you know what I'm talking about. But that is a prime example of a breach of the social contract. And what I described earlier about the relationship with a parent and child, there's a certain social contract that exists that's just inherent in that relationship. There's a certain social contract that's inherent in a representative democracy. And what we're seeing and what we have been raised to believe is that that social contract is impenetrable, and that it is uh um hold on, guys. Okay. That social contract is completely hold on a second. Okay. All right. I really just want to be focused here, and I keep getting interrupted. Okay. Um, it's such an important topic, and I didn't realize that I was going to have so many interruptions going into this. Um, all right. So, um, social contract. Here we go. Let me just double check last message before I get back on track here. Um, okay. Let me look at my notes. So going back to Majid and the podcast. So what he's saying is that everything that everything that has transpired with these mandates, he said, for example, the mandate of the entire shift of placing an expectation on an individual to sacrifice their own bodily autonomy for the greater good. That is not, that was never in the foundation of our social contract that we had in the West. It's part of a collectivist mentality, and I've talked about that before. It is what you see in countries like China, where everybody is taught from the beginning, from birth, that you exist to be a part of the collective. And it's actually, it goes very deep into our identity. And this is something that I wanted to address as well, because what's happened in our country and in the West is a stripping away of God. And the reason that it has been so easy for the decline that we've seen, the reason that it's been so easy to manipulate so many people into becoming like little junior informants in your neighborhood, and to be completely brainwashed and hypnotized by this narrative, is because the foundation upon which our social contract exists and has always existed, that of bodily autonomy, that of individual sovereignty, that has been eaten away at over the years. Taking God out of everything has had a profound and destructive impact on our nation's ability, and on the West's ability to to recognize that there is a social contract, and um, to be alarmed when it starts to get attacked in this way. And why is that? I've been thinking about this. It's a very deep conversation to have, and I might have to pick it up another day. But it's it's really important, and I've been praying about this, and I've been thinking about what's been going on with the truckers and with the Canadians and with Americans, and the fact that people have been so asleep, that you have so many sheep that are just blindly following and that are so easily convinced and manipulated. It's not they're not even manipulated because like manipulation implies that you have a foundation upon which to from which to extract. And the problem is that there is no foundation, that many people in the West now do not have a foundation of identity that is based um, in the rights that come from your creator. Because our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, is critical. It's critical that people have that foundation and they understand it, because it asserts that our rights are given to us by God. And so when you take God out of the equation, then by very virtue of doing that, you take out the assumption from birth that your rights are given to you by God. Are you guys tracking with me on this? And so when you have half of a population that doesn't even have a grid for where your rights come from, it's very easy to strip those rights and to do it in the name of collectivist contribution to the greater good. And so, in China, for example, there's organ harvesting that happens um, uh, against the will of the people. It's that you don't have a choice. Just like with the one child policy, that was always pushed being um, as being in place for the greater good. Nobody had bodily autonomy, and so in a system like that, you're born into a system where there is no assumption. There's no social contract that that gives people an understanding of their basic God-given rights. This is important to understand. It's important to understand because if without that foundation, people don't even understand that they're giving anything up. There's no grid. There's no grid for the social contract that is being broken. Just like in a collectivist society, when you have people that are willingly willing to do it for others, mask up for others. That all of that messaging comes from uh, the CCP playbook. It's a military grade psychological operation that is meant to shift an entire uh, society into that type of thought. And this is important for people to understand because without that foundation and that grounding in our origins, without the grounding of the relationship of even where we come from, our birthright, which is that we have rights that are given to us by God. We're not asking the government for rights. And I've talked about this a lot, but what we're seeing right now is that you have one set of individuals who deeply inherently understand that aspect of the social contract, that we have these unalienable rights that are given to us by our creator, um, and that nothing can take those away. Uh, and so the people that have been awake, people like me, people like you, who have been crying out since the beginning of this and saying, wait, stop, stop. Um, nobody makes me put a covering on my face and tries to manipulate me and tell me that it's for the greater good. That's not your job, and you don't have a right to do that. That's not in our social contract for you to dictate my bodily autonomy. Okay? However, because we have a the other half of the population that has no grid for that, literally no basis for it, because they don't have an understanding of who they are, of their identity. That is where we have the clash. Okay, this is not a clash of right versus left, right? This is a clash of the people who understand their birthright and those that would be willing to sell it for a bowl of soup because they don't know and understand the value of it. This is really critical to understand. And so if you look at the Canadians that we've seen in these protests have an inherent understanding of this. This is why they continue to go back to the charter rights, the Canadian charter rights, that are just it's not something that was granted to them by any Canadian prime minister or leader. These are rights that were granted to them by God. And I really want people to understand this, because when you see where the divide is coming, and you see the grief and just broken-hearted reaction of the Canadian people and of the American people and of any human being that inherently understands um, what is going on and why this social contract is so important. Um, then it becomes easier to see what's really at stake here, because what's really at stake is a spiritual conflict at the level of which we've never ever witnessed in modern times. It's an age old conflict, and it's been going on since the beginning of time. We're witnessing it playing out right now because we're seeing the face of evil being unleashed without reservation. And those of us in the West, who have been largely insulated from uh, geopolitics, we really haven't seen this level of evil just blatantly flaunted in our faces like this. And that's because, again, the people who understand their rights and who have a deep understanding, spiritually, without even being able to identify it, of their own autonomy, these are the ones that are just so shocked because we really don't have a grid for that level of evil. And one of the things that that I think they're trying to do is they're trying to desensitize you to that. Obviously, they're trying to remove God from the equation. And pray for my voice again. It's just been getting better, but it just so so this is just it's really important. And I was thinking about the story of Esau and Jacob. And I mean, I was asking the Lord about this, and he reminded me of that story and how these two brothers, born to the same parents, twins, they both had the same they both had the same foundation, right? They were both born into freedom. And uh and and but Esau didn't understand his identity. He actually had the uh, for lack of a better word, he was he didn't have that foundation of that social contract. He didn't understand his identity. And because of that, when he got hungry, and he was hungry, that's it. He was like famished. because of that one thing, he literally sold his birthright to his brother, to his younger brother, for a bowl of lentil soup and a piece of bread. Not even meat. He didn't even get a piece of meat. It was just soup. And I think it's really important for people to meditate on this, on what happened here. Um, because he also ended up losing his blessing from his own father. And if you look at the story of Jacob and Esau, I mean, there's so many layers to what happened there. I'm not going deep into exegesis on this. I'm just telling you what I see in relation to the birthright and to how it applies to the understanding of the social contract and what we can expect of God as our creator. Because had Esau understood really the depths of what it meant to have the birthright that he was born into, it would never, the words would never have popped into his mind. It never would have occurred to him to sell his birthright for a piece of bread and a bowl of vegetable soup. He didn't hesitate to offer that up. Like, it wasn't even, I mean, think about this. Like, if he had valued it, if he valued his birthright, he would have offered something more reasonable, like, hey, I'll give you an animal skin that I just got, for a bowl of soup, right? Something of equivalent, or even, maybe a little higher value. But the fact that he just, without even thinking, came out and offered up his birthright for a bowl of soup, to me, that is such a telling analogy of what we see happening in our culture today. Because people don't have an understanding of the value, and the fact that we are created in God's image and that our birthright is freedom, we very easily give it up because God has been removed from the conversation. God has been removed from our reality. And going down further into the story, when Jacob was, or when Isaac was dying on his deathbed, he wanted to see his older son, who he favored, um, and Esau, instead of going into his father, he actually let his mother tell him what to do. He wasn't, sorry, he went out to get he went out to get to kill the animal. And by the time he came back, Jacob had manipulated his way in to see his father and stolen the blessing as well. And so Esau missed it on a lot of levels. And I think that again, I'm not going to go deep into that story, but I think there are some things to really understand about this, is that he did not value his birthright. He didn't understand who he was. And another example of that is the older brother in the prodigal son story. The older brother was was really bitter about what the younger brother was given. And sorry guys, hold on. The older brother was incredibly bitter about what his younger brother had been given. And you know the story where when the older uh, when the younger brother comes back and the father, puts the coat on him and kills the fatted calf and has a party, the older brother is so bitter, and he's really angry at the father, and he's talking about how the father does all these things for the brother. And it's very interesting because you would think that the father would say, like, oh, stop complaining, it's going to be okay, I think we can rehabilitate him, whatever. The father looks at the older brother and says, this is everything that I have has always been yours. What's the problem? And so, all of this time, the older brother has been living with a poverty mindset, he's been resentful of the brother. He's allowed the brother to live rent free in his head, when all of this time he had the birthright of having not only the inheritance, but he had the run of the farm. He had access, he had free reign over everything that was his father's. And again, this is something that we have so many people living in a mental poverty because they don't understand their birthright. And that is why we see people who are afraid of standing up for their rights. They're afraid because they're afraid of what they might lose, and they don't understand that everything our Father has is at our disposal. That anything that we think that we're going to lose by by standing up for our freedoms, it never compares to giving up our um our birthright for something that is of far less value. And we're seeing that with a lot of people right now um, who have acted out of fear, because a lot of people, they don't even understand who they are or whose they are. And this is why I think that what is happening right now is really critical, because it is the revival is breaking out. And people have been pushed to the brink. The people who understand their birthright, the people who understand the social contract, and have lived it every day of their lives in an expectation that it would be returned by others and not broken. Um, these are people who have been willing to put everything on the line because they know that what we see here is not our inheritance, that our inheritance is in heaven, that our birthright is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, yes, in this life, but also in the life to come. And that the treasure that we have is so much bigger than than what people think that they need. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that there's any virtue in being poor and being forced to lose all of your property. I'm not advocating for that, but what I'm saying is that the reason that the truckers were willing to put it all on the line is because I think most of them, many of them, inherently know that there's way more on the line here than their possessions. I mean, some of them even outright said it, that they take my truck. This is way bigger than my truck. And so I think that, and they're also thinking generationally. And this is why President Trump did what he did, by coming into office and going against the deep state, because the very thing that we're witnessing right now is what has been the agenda all along. This is part of their Agenda 2030. It was really Agenda 2021, but they got pushed back on their timeline. Um, but this is unfortunately, it's a taste of what they wanted for the whole world. What we're seeing in Canada right now, can it be stopped? I think that it can. I think that God is bigger than what's happening right now, and what Trudeau is trying to do. The fact that he's doubling down so hard tells me that I think that they know that their days are numbered. I think they do. I think that they know that the walls are closing in. Um, but it's not easy to witness. But going back to the revival part of this, what I think is happening is that God is moving in such a big way that people are seeing every day what is happening with the truckers. They're seeing what's happening with people that are being forced out of their businesses at this point, like just for selling coffee to protesters. I mean, at some point, even the most hardened liberals who thought that they were siding with people like Trudeau have to wake up and realize, like, there's something very wrong here. Because, God has put the longing for him in our hearts, right? A we have the spirit of God living in us from before the foundation of the world. And I'm not talking about Holy Spirit. I'm talking about that we're made in the image of God. Holy Spirit comes into you when you receive Christ and ask Holy Spirit to indwell you. It's part of your salvation. I'm talking about the very image of God that was put into man, like we see in Romans 1. That we can't escape that, and that is why people who have a soul, who have any vestiges of their soul remaining, will continue to not feel okay about what's happening. That at some point it pricks their conscience. And so we're seeing more and more people wake up. Um, Now, sadly, it's hurting people, but we are at war. And if this past weekend and the actions today of baby Castro have not convinced you of that, I don't know what will. Um, is it tragic that we have to come to this, that we're seeing our neighbors to the north who like play hockey and ski and do the luge and make maple syrup be treated as extreme dissidents by a brutal dictatorship? Yeah, that's pretty tragic. But it should open everyone's eyes to the need for Jesus, to the need for coming back to that foundation of of what grants us our freedoms. It's God. We cannot function as a society without that. Just can't. I mean, look at every society that has removed God from their midst. They turn into fascist, totalitarian dictatorships. That's it. That's all you got. Okay. So, um, all right. Let me just see where we are here. I'm running a little late today. I think this is a good place to stop. I will say that the CCLA, which is the Canadian counterpart to the ACLU, has actually filed in federal court to stop these emergency powers. So they're coming to the defense of the truckers, um, and so that's important. So where does this leave us today? In case you haven't figured this out, um, if you haven't been praying, it's time to pray. If you haven't been worshiping God and filling your atmosphere um, with the things of God, now is the time. And remember that the Apostle Paul was the chiefest of sinners. He was the one who was standing by, um, watching when Stephen was stoned, and they were casting lots for his garments. Paul was witness to that. He was literally a terrorist. He was like ISIS, and he was going around killing Christians, and God stopped him on the road to Damascus, and that changed everything. So those people that we think, the police standing in that police line, these unmarked militaristic people, um, even people like Justin Trudeau, it's really tough in our human flesh to want to see them, to even imagine that any of them are a Saul of Tarsus that is going to get, arrested on the road to Damascus to kill more Christians. Um, but we don't know God, and we don't know the power of his resurrection when it comes to the most hardened people. hopefully we know the power of his resurrection in our own lives, and we're continuing to um, press into that and to make demands on that in our own lives. And I would also say that perhaps this is the time to call that forth in resolution of what's going on in Canada, because it's beyond our control. It's outside of our ability to do something in the natural. I think you've probably figured that out now by now. Pray for the truckers, pray for their families, pray for the businesses around Ottawa that are being targeted by these black shirts or brown shirts or whatever they are. Um, they need to know the strength of God. Pray for angelic presence to come alongside them to comfort them. Pray for them to have dreams of a future where God is honored in their country once again. We need that in America as well. The Freedom Convoy is starting this week to go from west to east. There are a lot of people who think that it shouldn't happen. I happen to believe that it should. They're not going into DC, but they're traveling across the country, because I think now more than ever, this is a time to unite our country, not just around a person, um, uh, Donald Trump. We love him, but we love God more. And what we're being forced, what we're being faced with right now, is that without God, we're nothing. We have absolutely nothing. And the example that our Canadian brothers and sisters gave us, when they were standing there face to face with these stormtroopers, was they continually said, "We love you. We love you. We love you. This is not who you are." And if anything, as we're going through this process and we're looking at people that are facing off as our supposed enemies, one of the things that I would encourage um, all of you to do is to speak identity into the people that have been deceived by this narrative. This is not who you are. This is not who God made you to be. God made you to be a person who values individual human rights, including your own. God made you to be free. This is so important. It's an amazing time, because we're really at a crossroads, and we're either choosing to press in to we're either choosing to press in to the truth, um, or we're choosing to walk in despair. That, like, there's no middle ground here. And so, what are we going to bring into the equation? I want to check your comments here. I'm glad you guys are getting something out of this. Uh, um, Serena says, "Are comments turned off?" No, the comments are here. I don't know why. Um, Jesus is our rock and our peace. Absolutely. Continue to gather with Christ followers. Exactly. Um, a lot of people do not think God is real. Sometimes it takes an encounter with the devil for people to understand that God is real. So I think that that may be happening. Um, Nancy Drew says, "Thank you, Mary Grace. You are speaking truth, freedom, and love of God's creation. My God is my Lord and Savior, not the tyrants." Exactly. Yeah. So the thing that's making these people so angry is that it's the demons, it's the demonic. The demons get really angry when they understand that when they realize that they can't own you. They can't own your soul. This is why, in the communist countries where the Christian church, the underground church is so strong that they they double down on Christians. They attack them because it makes them so angry that they can't they can torture the body, they can take the possessions, they can kill the body. They can't kill Jesus living inside of a human being. That's where our freedom comes from. And that's the key. That's what we're seeing right now. That's why Justin is big mad, because he's partnering with his father, the devil. And you can see it in his eyes. You can see the contempt in his eyes. Some of the people, that are the most zealous for Christ are the ones that have had a glimpse of hell, who've actually been allowed to see it and been allowed to come back. And I don't know what's going to happen in Canada, but God knows. And he sees and he knows what's going on in the hearts of the people. Um, Mary on YouTube has an example here. She says, after an accident uh, in 2006, a vision standing in a hallway in front of an elevator started me on my road to a relationship with Jesus. The elevator was only going down. I just knew. Yeah, so sometimes that's what it takes. There was a comment up here that I wanted to see. If you're coming into the show late today, make sure you go back and listen to the replay, because I think this is very powerful what God is speaking to people today. And I think that it's important, that people hear this. So please share it. Please share it into groups that you belong to. Please tag your friends. I do get incredibly censored. That will not happen on Truth Social. I don't know what video capabilities we're going to have over there, but please continue to share and make sure that you followed all my channels. Please follow my Rumble channel, Mary Grace Media, at Mary Grace Media over on Rumble, so that if I get taken off of any of these socialist media platforms, you will be able to find me. And also go and follow my Telegram, Mary Grace Media Official. Um, so, Gino says former leftists are also some of the strongest people on the right, in my opinion. Exactly. I mean, look at Brandon Strzok. He founded the Walkaway movement, and he was a dedicated, hardcore leftist, Hillary Clinton voter, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely hated Donald Trump. And then his eyes began to be open to the hypocrisy and the outright lies that were being driven by the media. Um, the other thing that I want to emphasize is that um, what was I going to say? Um, I just lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have read the comments. I got distracted. What was it I was going to say? I don't know. Um, I think that the one thing I will say is that we want to have grace um, for the people that do come around. It's very easy to get into an "I told you so" moment, and trust me, um, it's not easy. But I have a family member who sent me, uh, who the other night sent me the videos of the trucker convoys, and this is a family member that we have not agreed politically on a lot of things for years, and it's somebody that they know exactly where I stand. Uh, we've seen eye to eye on the pandemic, which has really opened, I think, more doors. But you know, they actually sent me an article. This person was very steeped in progressivism and I think still considers themselves a progressive, especially socially. But they sent me an article about how far off the progressives have gotten with regard to the working class. And it was an indictment against progressives who are supposedly the champions of the working class who absolutely hate these truckers. And this person sent me that article. So, don't give up on the loved ones that you have that are in a completely other direction right now. Pray that their eyes are open. Um, Larry on YouTube says he's leaving Seattle. The people are brainwashed. Yeah, I believe it. We need an absolute and total, like complete revival in certain cities and areas. Okay, so I've gone over time today. I appreciate everybody for being here. I really do. And I I will be back on Wednesday. Let me just give you guys a link really quickly. If you want to get CBD or you want to support the show by purchasing superfoods and participating in our upcoming group transformation in March, you can contact me. So go to shopwithmarygrace.com to get CBD and then go to info at marygracemedia.com to get superfoods. I'll give you a voucher to save over $100 off of your superfoods. It's really great, and springtime is a really good time to do a transformation. Just shed all of the negativity and the excess weight, the sluggishness, the fatigue, um, sleeplessness, things like that. There's so many benefits, not to mention the cost. um, Comparatively to what groceries are costing these days, the superfoods are really one of the best values you can get. So check that out. Take a screenshot, shopwithmarygrace.com for CBD, and then info at marygracemedia.com for superfoods. I absolutely love the CBD, by the way. It's one of the best things I've ever used for natural pain relief, especially if you have uh, um, like muscle pain, joint aches, and things like that. It's amazing. It really helps. So check that out. And I think that's it. So thank you to my moderators. Thank you to everybody who's been here today. I really, really appreciate all of you, and I will be back on Wednesday. I'm telling you, play worship music in your home. If you're looking for good worship, I would recommend like tribal worship, TRIBL. Also, Upper Room, they have some good worship. But just don't neglect that. Don't underestimate the power of what's coming in through the eye gates and the ear gates and into the atmosphere of your home. Okay, don't let the devil have that territory. All right, it makes a big difference. Even if you're not a believer, go check out some of that music. You might be surprised at what happens just in your heart. Okay, I love you guys. I will be back on Wednesday, and hope everybody has a great day.